Hello everyone, it's Dmitry and Surfalytics, and today we'll talk about our next lesson, just enough CLI for data roles, and we'll do a bit of hands-on, but most of all, first of all, we will understand why CLI could be useful for data roles and why it could be useful for you. Even if you're not planning to work as a data engineer or any other engineering role, just the analyst, you still may benefit working with CLI and understanding what is it, knowing like the basic commands. And I honestly think it can give you competitive advantage on the current market. And currently I'm on Fiji, so maybe my face a bit burned from the sun, but the weather is great, the water is great, and yeah, let's get started. So I put everything in GitHub repo, and for this lesson, everything what we need the terminal. I'm using default terminal in macOS. If you're using the Windows, you may use the PowerShell, but I don't recommend to use PowerShell anyone. Instead, I will show you couple steps what you need to do for the Windows. A shell program that runs commands like ones that user enter into terminal window. Those commands can be other program or built-in features of shell. The shell also serves as small programming environment. Unix programmers often break common tasks in smaller components and use the shell to manage tasks and piece things together. And we will talk more about the Unix pipelines in the future, and the Unix commands and the order how we execute them might remind us the traditional data engineering data pipeline. There are many different Unix shells, but all derive feature from the Bourne shell, a standard shell developed at Bell Labs for early version of Unix. Linux uses the enhanced version of Bourne shell called BASH, or the Burn Again shell. The BASH shell is the default shell on the most Linux distribution, and bin/sh is normally a link to bash on a Linux system. So currently I'm on the Mac, and I'm using ZShell. So in some point of time, the Mac OS, I even put this information here. Some point of time Mac OS switched from the bash to ZShell. This is an extension of bash that has many new features and themes. ZShell was released in 1990 by Paul Fallstart. The shell has similarities with Korn shell as well. Never used, by the way. Linux and macOS use bash as their default shell. So if for example, if I type bash here, right, we now in the bash. And we see the $sign. Usually all commands in the documentations or in the textbooks we can see starting from the $sign. And this is actually tells us a bit. So the $sign means you're a normal user, so it's just the user. And I can do the switch to the root user, that means it's administrator, and it will switch to hashtag. The person sign is usually for ZShell and it's out of the scope. So the bottom line here is said in one of my past videos that we should use macOS, and this is the most convenient way to work in the data space. So I'm going to switch back to ZShell, and this is what we have. It tells the user, the computer user, and yeah, the tilde, a couple things I even forgot what they mean, but it doesn't really matter for now. So they only matter what commands we'll put here, and we'll talk over these. So, but first of all, couple use cases, and I highlighted use case both for the data engineers and data analyst roles. So obviously data engineer have more use case than data analyst. For example, let's start from data analyst. Sometimes you still need to connect remote virtual machine and using your CLI interface or terminal where you can SSH the remote virtual machine. You often still need to use the Git. For example, you need to clone repo, or maybe you even need to submit the code there. You may also need to modify config files for different software. Like the most popular use case is dbt. So if you want to run dbt, and probably you need to run dbt, and you will learn about this in the future, you definitely need to know how to use the terminal. The cron scheduler like helps us to run the task and schedule them run on the cadence. So for run scripts and automation. In many cases for data analyst role, and even sometimes for data engineer role, your work, the times then you work with terminal is actually not that often. That's why you even can work years without even touching this. But as I said, I think it's really great competitive advantage for you trying to learn this terminal command line interface, bunch of commands, and try to use them. For data engineers, I think it's way more useful, way more popular. For example, the Git itself and how the Git workflow organized usually is through terminal. Of course, you can download GitHub desktop, and actually the next video will be about the GitHub, and we will use a lot of terminal. Usually in IDE, integrated development environment, you can also modify lots of files in IDE with UI, but if you need run any kind of commands or scripts, you will use the terminal. For most of the, I think it's for all cloud providers like AWS, Azure, GCP, you may need to use the CLI tools and be able to connect and run commands. Sometimes use shortcuts, still cron automations. Often for both BI engineer or data engineer or BI developer, you may need to administrate different software, for example, ETL server, or it could be, I don't know, Kafka server, or any kind of open source thing that you need to be able to access and administrate. For example, BI or data analyst can work with Apache Superset or even like more traditional BI tools, and they need to be able to do the configuration. Even recently, I did upgrade for the Looker, and I did SSH to the virtual machine that has only Amazon Linux terminal, and I need to download a bunch of files, extract them, change the configuration files, and then install. So in most of the cases, I use just the guide, but for me, it was very helpful that I understand how those things work. For the Windows, if you're running on the Windows machine, instead of using PowerShell or CMD, you need to install WSL. You can read here more about WSL. And WSL is a Windows subsystem for Linux. So it's basically your Linux environment inside your Windows machine. Currently, because we're already using ZShell, but you know, it's like looks a bit boring, and to make it more interesting and nice for us, we want to install additional plugins. One of the most popular that also works with PowerShell, but I think it calls OhMyPowerShell, it's OhMyZsh. So we can quickly install it. I don't know how quick it will be with my Fiji internet connection, but I can try. It's actually not that bad. So, and it's already, we see lots of bright colors, and it's slightly changed. Okay. The next step for this, we can install the different plugins and different themes. Everything what is important for us, we can find and configure inside a special configuration file that lives in our home page, and it has the name like dot file name, and it's zshrc file. And then we're using on the bash, there is similar file, but .bashrc file. Before actually going and install all those plugins, we can go through the basic CLI commands. And then, because we need to modify files, we need to install files, we maybe need to do different kind of commands. And to give you a better idea what they means, we can just skip all those things for install the plugins, and I highly recommend to install the plugins because they will make your work, make you more productive and efficient. So we can move straight to basic Linux commands. And Another thing that you need to know about Linux and shell, that it has standard input and standard output. It also has the standard error. And this information in particular useful, for example, if you're planning to be as a data engineer. So data engineer often works with systems that distributed system that hosted on the Linux machines. And you often can, for example, download your logs statement. For example, you can download standard error or standard output to see browse what is happening. So the Unix processes use input-output streams to read and write data. Processes read data from input streams and write data to output streams. Standard input and output are often abbreviated as stdin and stdout. And for error is stdir. The first command that I want to show you is the cut. So the cut command is quite simple. This program is just can open the files and read what's inside. And if we will speak about this command in the sense of standard input and output, so then I will run command, and for example, first I can see, do I have any files here? I don't have anything here, so I can go to another directory. I can trying to go here. For example, I have readme file. So, and cut can open readme for me and print it out. So this is example. So, and the output I see is basically the standard output. So then we trigger this command, it's returned everything what's in the file. Another command that I already used multiple times, it's ls. These commands list the content of directory. The default is the current directory where we currently, but we can add the whole path to the directory that we want to list. Then for example, I go back, and this actually, right, the cd command that I already used multiple times, that is change directory. So, and if I do 2 dots, it returns me to one directory back, right? And another command that I also highlight here is pvd. It will also give me always the path where I am currently now. So here, if I say ls command, I only see the folders. If I will add the flag L, I can see more details, including who is the owner, including permissions, and the date and the file was created. And I also can try to use another flag like F, and it can tell me the file type information, but maybe for this I need to go to see any files. And you see also then I try to go in the folder and I can click tab, it will suggest me what options we have. But then we install the plugin, we also can have benefits. For example, it will know all the history of commands and it will be way easy for us to come back and return. So yeah, if I go to downloads and trying to do lsf, so it will tell me list of the files and their type. If I will just, for example, do ls, or actually the same. So honestly, I don't know the difference, and I never used the -f before. The cp command is doing the copy, so we can copy files. For example, I can say cp try to choose the file, and because I have the space, so I try to use the quotes, and I will copy it to this one. and we can try to see, do we have, yeah, we have new files. We also can copy file to the folder and SCP. And for example, if you will work with AWS CLI, like with command ls, you can see list of the buckets, or with CP, you can copy data from one bucket to another one. Mwhere, this command is move, and it's similar to CP, but it's actually moving the files. Also, we can use this command. It's like not that obvious, but if you want to rename the files, we will use the move command as well. The touch command will create the empty files for us. So for example, we want to start creating any kind of configuration file, we can say just touch my config dot YAML, right? And I see the file is empty, and then we can start to edit the file. We can delete the file with a rem command, remove. So I can delete file that sometimes we need to delete the whole directory. In this case, we need to pass the additional flag. This will help to remove the whole directory. The echo command prints the arguments of standard output. So if I will try this one, so it will just print hello world for me. The cd we tried many times, probably it's the most popular command. The same, and the next one, the most popular command is ls. And usually ls is not enough because we don't see any hidden files or dot files. We need to use like ls -l and cd. So this is usually good enough. So with cd we can change the directory and moving for the folders, and we can copy the path, and we can do whatever we want. The tilde usually means, if I will say cd tilde, it means I will go to my home folder, because my username is Surfalytics and I'm in my folder. mkdir commands creates a new directory, so I can create, and we can see there is where is it? Interesting. Yeah, it is here. This is my empty directory, and because it's directory, I can go inside of this, right? And I can see with pwd, I can see that I'm right inside. So if we want to remove directory, we can use rmdir, and we can pass also, yeah, as I said, we can pass -r to remove the directory with all the files inside. Linux using wildcards, similar, for example, how the SQL, and usually it's two popular wildcards. For example, in Windows, if you want to search all the files, you will use star.star. In Linux, it's just the star. And the %sign match exactly one symbol. The command grep, sometimes it's useful. It can help us to search content inside the files, or just inside any standard output. We can so the grep commands, if say right, the grep commands prints the lines from a file or input stream that match the expression. So if I will try to do this, it basically will go to this file, and in this file it will return all the lines that has a root in it. And then I can use also this command, and I see demo. And I can use the pipe. For example, I want to count number of lines, and this is the Unix style, that using the pipe we can take output, standard output of one command, and use it as an input for the next command. So in this case, I will take this output without printing this, and I will use the simple command vc that will count number of rows for me. So, and we see everything, and in the bottom we can see that there are too many things. And if we will try another command that we did in the past, where we have less rows, let's try to, we see here. So, and here we have one. Okay, despite the fact that the command is word count, this will return number of lines, number of the words, and number of characters. So that's not exactly what I expect, but it is what it is. So we also have the extra options like -e or -v, -i for case insensitive matches, -v is basically inverse the search. So, and this is more information about the wildcards. So the command less comes in handy when the file is really big, and then we don't want to open the whole file because it's maybe not good for us to scroll it in just inconvenient. And or when this command output is long and scrolls on the top of the screen. So we can try. So in this case, it returns a bit of words, and then I can click space, and it will do more and more. And I can click space and continue to go. By the way, do you see those two dots? And if it's tricky to exit from here. To exit here, we need to use the quit. And I will talk more about this. Then I will speak about Vim and Nano as two popular text editors. So the pvd print working directory, we already tried it. Very helpful, especially when you navigate through a bunch of like files and folders and don't know where you exactly. The diff commands will compare two files, and for example, it could be handy if you have two configuration files and you just don't know which one, what's the difference in that. So the diff can tell you exactly what's the difference. So the file command can give you idea about the type of the files. For example, because many files in Linux system, they don't have extensions. They don't specifically need to have extension. That's why then we can use the file to understand what's the file. The both commands find and locate, they do pretty similar things, and they help you to search for specific files or locate the specific files. The head and tail, it's another one. Usually it's very helpful then you want to work with the logs. And for example, you work with dbt and you have very big log, and you want just to starting from the bottom, start to browsing and see the most recent logs. Then you can use the head and tail. So for example, if I will do the head etc password, so it will show me top 10 records. I can also do the tail and see the bottom 10 records. The sort commands will return us the files in alphabetical order. For example, if I go back, go to downloads, and then try to do the... Now we can talk about the dot files. So the dot files, also known as the configuration file. So if I will run ls, I can see only the folders. If I can run ls with -l, I can see still the folders. But if I will run still the folders, but I can now see their permission. If I run ls-a, ls-a, I can see folders and the files not now. Or I can do, for example, mix of two. So, and this dot and the name of the file, it means it's the dot files, and usually we want to hide those files. For example, if we want to commit them to the repo, and we use them for different kind of configurations things. For example, the files .zshrc. This file is used for the configurations of this shell, and our OhMyZsh plugin, and we'll work with this a bit later. So now we want to talk about environments and shell variables. We use a lot environments in the data, and this is the way how we can pass the credentials. For example, you have the passwords, you have the users, and the rule number one for any data roles, like we always need to protect our credentials. And for example, you have the token or you have the password. We don't want to ever share it in the Slack or use them as a just hard-coded in our code and programs. And one way of doing this is using environment variables. So we can assign this to environment variable, and then we can use the variable across everything. There is also shell variables, and the shell variables, they can store temporary variables called shell variables containing the values of text strings. Shell variables are very useful for keeping track of values in scripts, and some shell variables control the way the shell behaves. So to assign the variable, it's the equal sign. So if you work with Python, you know how to assign variables there. So it's very similar, but no spaces. And this, for example, how we can assign the variables. And then I can, if I will assign the variable, then I can access the variables like .host. Or we can use the echo to actually print the value. An environment variable is like shell variable, but it's not specific for the shell. All processes on Unix system have environment variable storage. The main difference between environment and shell variables is that the operating system passes all of your shell's environment variables to programs that the shells runs, whereas shell variables cannot be accessed in the commands that you run. Assign an environment variable with the shell's export command. For example, if you would like to make the stuff variable, to convert this shell variable to environment variable, we should use export command. So for example, this is our variables. We can do the echo $ stuff. So in PowerShell, that's always the difference. So if here we use the $, the PowerShell will be different. And most examples out there in the industry, they use all the Linux variables and Linux commands. That's why I always highlight that macOS with ZShell is the way to go. We can see this, but now we can export the stuff, and shell variables become the environment variables. Another thing what worth to mention, but usually you don't need to worry about these, and usually all the packages and software you install, they're already adding their part into path. So path is special environment variable that contains the command path, or path for short. A list of system directories that shell searches and trying to locate a command. So for example, the most popular package manager for macOS Brew, then we install it, it's adding it's to the path. So this is how then I type the command brew, if I have one. It's actually locate the rest this package leaves and this command leaves and everything, and then it can get the information out of this. The special characters. There are a lot of special characters like star, dot, bank, pipe, /, backslash, $, tick, double quote, back quote, caret, tilde, hash, the square brackets and braces and underscore, and they usually help when we work with regex. And regex is the way how we can search particular pattern in the string, and currently it's out of the scope, but then we work with data, and for the data engineer it might be helpful. So for example, I will just quickly show what's regex. There are lots of resources, but right now we just don't need to think about this. But if you right? This is this actually really simple to decode if to know what each record to mean, right? And Linux is very friendly with regex, and sometimes like in shell scripts or even in the SQL, it's quite popular. Then you have complex condition that hard to meet with symbol like equal, in, or like statements. Then you need like slightly out of the box and use regex, and many system is supporting them. So now we want to talk a bit about the ways how we can modify the files. So the most powerful is v and EMACS. So EMACS, it's the whole, it's kind of like IDE. So it has, it's pretty complicated, and some people they use it forever for everything. It's because we have the video about Visual Studio Code. This is quite powerful and easy to use. So EMACS serves the same idea. It's like IDE, but it has lots of shortcuts. If you master this, you probably could be really efficient and fast, but it's the whole learning curve how to do this. And if you don't have time to learn this thing, just don't need. The V or Vim is a bit like more features. V is the better, but also is the most simplest editor is Nano. So the Nano is like just a text editor. The V still requires you a bit of the knowledge. For example, if I will touch and create new file, for example, file txt, and then I can do the Nano file txt. So here I can insert the text, or I can just type the text, and it also have some shortcuts, and we can copy paste the text here, and then I can do the Control X, and it said, do you want to save? Yes, I want to save. And now, for example, I can do the cut to see the content of the file. This is my file. So I can touch another file, or maybe I can use the Vim. All my OS, they have Vim. I can say the file to txt, and you see now we in the Vim editor. So currently I'm in the like view mode. If I want to start input the text, I need to switch to input mode. I can click I, right? It's insert mode, and I can type hello world. It has lots of shortcuts and key combinations, key bindings, how to jump like to the beginning of the line or in the middle, like how to choose multiple lines, and so on and so on, like many of them. So, and it's the mem, very known man on Stack Overflow, how to create Vim. Yeah, how do I exit Vim? This is very popular post, and you see it more than 5,000 upvotes. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? First, we need to exit from insert mode with escape, and then we can pass the commands. We need to use the colon, and after the colon, we have the options. We can use the Q, just Q. We have queued without saving. We have write and queued, and we want to write and queued, attempting to the force. And usually, like VQ is good enough. So right now you have masterclass on the Vim. That's it. What you need to know. If you want to use Vim, is nice. If you don't want to spend time with Vim, just use the Nano. Nano is good enough. One more thing that's useful and often required, especially for data engineer roles, if you have some like administration duties, or even if you want to use SSH key, if you want to SSH from virtual machine to virtual machine from your local machine, for example, usually what you do inside your home folder with SSH folder. I don't have it. I can do mkdir SSH. So I create this folder. this is dot folder, I can go there. And usually we can have the key here. We have public and private key, and I can touch, for example, my key dot I forgot exact extension, or like public key and the private key. And usually the private key should have the certain permissions. That's why even for this little step, you already need to change the permission of the file. And here what we have, so each files, and this example of this, then we do ls l, we see the file and we see the permissions, and we can split it on 3 groups. Each 3 groups, it's 3 digits, and each one represents something. But each letter means R, it's for readable, W, it means writable, X means the file is executable. So, for example, if you create the shell script, then it won't be executable, so you need to grant permissions to make this file executable. If it's a private key, then you need to remove all kinds of permissions to limit the read. So, and there are 2 ways how we can express the permissions. One of them for each of the permissions, and it's so we check the Linux permissions, trying to see if they have so yeah, there's the 3 groups. This is the first group is for user who owns the file. The second is who's not. It's actually I don't want to spend time right now to reading this. So instead, yeah, there is just the way how to read this. The one is just using the letters, or we can use the numbers. So, and this is just examples. We can and chmod. This is the command that can change the permissions of the files. And instead of giving those long string with the letters, we can simply say with the numbers. So the 7, it's everything. It's like read, write, and execute. And there is the 0, there is 5, and there is 4. So each of them, it represents what each group can do. There is also in Linux sometimes useful symbolic links. So for example, then you have the single configuration file, and you want to put this file into multiple location, and you don't want the users let this file change. For example, it often works with Terraform. Then you do infrastructure as a code. So and symbolic link help you to generate the file for like your main configuration file, for example, your region for AWS, and then you can place this file to multiple places. Again, for data analysts, I almost never work with this file. For data engineer, you might need to know this in the future. As the Windows, Linux, you can create archives and compress the files. There is also, it supports the zip files and tars. And there is administrator in Linux calls sudo. So if you want to switch to the sudo, so I can type sudo. And for example, if I want to run any kind of command with sudo, then it will ask my admin password, and then it will try to execute. Yeah, it's give me the error that it's dangerous, run as a root, so I don't want to do this, but show this example. You can execute as admin using the sudo command. There are some shortcuts that could be very useful. For example, if you type long string, I can click Ctrl A to jump to the begin, Ctrl E to jump to the end. And or some, if you learn even this number of shortcuts, you can be very efficient. In the end, I have little appendix how we install VSL on Windows machine, and then how we install the OhMyZsh. But now we can go back and actually work a bit with our files for ZShell. So I can open the new tab. So it's my OhMyShell. Now I can start to work on this and modify. So where we have, now we can work on our ZShell RC file to see the configuration, add additional plugins or install. To do so, we can open either with Vim or NANO. It doesn't matter. zshrc file. So here we can change, for example, the themer, and there are lots of themes available out there. Or you can just Google OhMyZsh themes, and you can see there are many of them. For example, currently I'm using the default one, Robbie Russell, but another popular one is Agnostor. You see it has those 9 lines for you, but I found that you copy paste it from wiki pages and everything. It's not that convenient, and also it requires to install additional fonts. But instead, what I want to do, I want to add the plugins. One of them, for example, is autocomplete plugin. That could be very useful. So to do this, first we need to go into plugins and adding more plugins. So we have plugins here. Yeah, these plugins we see, and I can just modify it. I need to go to insert mode. Now I can modify it. And another plugin that we want to try is syntax highlighting. Right now we're adding those plugins, but we don't expect that anything will change, because we need also first restart our terminal, but mostly important is to download and run installation of those plugins. So to exit from Vim, I need to click Exit, column, VQ. That is good. So now we can go maybe to the page of each plugin and see the install path. So let's find installation and see for macOS. And I say for macOS we can use HomeBrew. Yeah, for macOS this is the way. If you never work with Brew, it's this one. So it's basically to install most of the packages on macOS terminal, even though you can install their applications through the Brew. Very convenient. Okay, we did this, and next we need to activate by running this command. Okay, alternative, it's using git clone and then adding the path to here. Okay, what's about this one? For syntax highlighting, it's the same. We can go to the Git and see what we have for installation. md. For macOS, it's brew install, very convenient. And then we also need to run this command. So now, hopefully, if we open new tab, something will, it tells us it couldn't find those plugins, and it is fine. But see what else we have. Now we have the syntax highlight, that's good. And we probably don't need to put them into plugins, so I can go nano to fix my file. Now you see I'm not using not the Vim but nano. We can go and remove two plugins, because the way how we install it for the brew, it means we don't need to put it here. And there are lots and lots of different plugins to do any kind of work. And now I can click Ctrl X. And yes. So if I open the new tab, it tells me that there is the error near the plugins. Yeah, I have extra. Where is? Now I can open. Yeah, now it should be good. For example, I can go see downloads. Then I can go, or maybe I can go GitHub. I can go to this folder, and you see it's highlighted with different colors that I have. I can type git status. And this is for Git related thing. So to summarize this, we have a bunch of examples. We look different commands. So I suggest you to give a try. You see, even for me, like using everyday CLI and terminal, I just using it without knowing how I use it most of the time, just running the commands. And I think it is good before you exercise to try to install different plugins and see how it might work with plugins and see what's the output. So this is the final link I want to share, maybe one more. But here you can see the list of different plugins. And depends on what you're working, it might be helpful for you. Also, I want to highlight that, for example, most of the time I work in iTerm. It's open source, it's free, terminal. It also can have we can do the split, right? And we can change the colors and splits. But the traditional macOS terminal is this one. So I'm not using this, I'm using this in the dark mode. If we'll think about VS Code, so now my Visual Studio Code, if I open the terminal, it will have the same modes and plugins, everything what I have for in the iTerm as the individual terminal. And this is my usual preferred way. Then I work in the repo, and the next lesson we will spend for the repo. Okay, thank you everyone, bye.